you hear me?
I got you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're in good shape then.
So we're recording, so make sure you got a good angle. You get your good side.
Pal, there's no good side from here. It's pretty much over.
All right, everyone's coming in. There's David. What's up, brother?
Not much.
I brought in a wingman today. I brought in my chief appraiser, Steve Caldwell. Steve, meet Darren Pomponio and crew.
Oh, there he is. Hey, Steve, what's up?
Hey, Darren, how are you? Nice to meet you guys. I love the American flag behind you, man. That's super good. What's that made out of? Is that wood?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I just did that this weekend. I was bored.
Get out of here. That's rad.
No,
that's pretty cool. Either way, let me give you some props on that. That's pretty awesome.
We're going to have, we have quite a few coming in still, so sit tight.
This is a bold meeting time right after a holiday, you know?
You know what? When you have someone good like you coming on, the man.
Yeah, right.
People want to see it.
Yeah, we'll get everybody ready for the week. Get myself ready for the week.
I need to have you come out again for one of our buy-sell meetings. The last one we had, we're not going to have one in March. We'll have one in April, but this last one we had, last week, we had maybe close to 70, 80 in there.
Wow.
It was good.
That's great. Steve, I don't know if you heard this, but this is being recorded. So, make sure your lighting's good. Okay.
I will, man. Yeah, I'll hook myself up with something here.
Let's see. All right, guys. Thanks for getting on. I wanted to introduce you to Mr. Brent Jones. He is the CEO of R3 AMC, probably 20 years or so, I'd imagine. Back when I was in my Vegas days, he's always just been one of the best to deal with as far as with appraisals and getting things through the system and questions and whatever. He's the best out there. Some of you may have met Brent a few months back. He came in and did a little presentation for us, one of our buy-sell meetings. So if you did, then you're going to get a little more of that, plus probably a little extra. But I wanted to bring him on and just go over what's happening out there with appraisals, what he has to offer to help you all as realtors get more business, help with your business, whatever maybe. It's all up to Brent and his partner. Is it Steve?
It is, yeah. Steve Caldwell.
Okay. So it's up to Brent and Steve to make sure you get more business. So that's why they're here. And if they don't get you more business, then he's going to make sure you guys will have their cell phone numbers and you can call them. But hopefully this helps get you guys more business. So anyway, I will be quiet and Brent.
All right. Thanks, Darren. All right. Fun. Hey, the most important thing about today is if you all get your pens and papers out, or if you've got your phone out, I want you to have our cell phone numbers. Okay. And I'll explain to you in a little bit why. My number is 702-591-7245. And Steve, do you want to go ahead and tell them your number as well?
I will. Yeah. It's 801-550-8469. I actually just put both of our cell phone numbers in the chat. So if you have any want to reference back there, you should be set to go.
Ask me if I know how to do that.
I was going to ask Brent, I was going to say, Brent, put it in chat. I mean, if
I get a Wi-Fi connection, I've hit a home run on these. Are you kidding? I set the bar really low. So let me tell you why I'm giving you, and I'm going to make everybody, I can't see everybody, but I want you all to raise your right hand. Okay, play with me here. I can see some of you. I promise I will not call Steve or Brent to pull my comps for me. Okay, is that a deal? We can start with that. What I will do, and what Steve and I are both available for, is when you have those unicorn properties and you just don't know what an appraiser would do with it, or a condition, whether it's a VA, or you know what, even if you get a low appraisal somewhere and you want a second set of eyes on it. Our backgrounds, Steve's been at this now 20 plus years. He was a chief appraiser with an independent mortgage bank for 12 years. I've been doing this. This is my 32nd year. I spent 5 years with Fannie Mae as a senior analyst for the Western U.S. We can look at an appraisal in 2 minutes and tell you whether you got something to fight on. So, I know this is being recorded, but, appraisals never come in low at All Western Mortgage. So you're going to have to X out that part. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Okay.
But while that isn't the case, what I can tell you is that we take as proactive approach as we can in this process. We leverage Fannie Mae guidelines. Part of what Steve and I, between the two of us, have taught over a couple hundred classes to agents and to loan officers. We're a resource for you, and let me tell you why. Darren, we do go back. It's been 20 years, Darren. Darren was a loan officer for Del Webb. He was one of my biggest clients. I used to go in and beg him for work, and we managed to be friends, stay friends, and be able to do business together. And so anything I can do that helps you get business, that gets him a look at business, I'm all aboard. Okay. With that being said, there were some rule changes. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but they changed the appeal process on appraisals here this last year. And basically the biggest change in the appeal process, or what is formally called a reconsideration of value, is that no longer can the agents just handle that amongst themselves. If there is a value appeal, if there's a value that comes in below contract, that buyer now has to be the one to be notified that the appraisal came in low, and they have to be the one that initiates any comps, any sharing of comps, any appeal process. And then there's another step that now it has to go to the lender's underwriter. So now you've got this delay for when you do have a value issue, and you do have that wild card now as to whether or not the buyer is really going to want to pay a higher price. So it changes kind of the negotiating stance. What used to be able to be maneuvered between both agents, get the comps to the AMC, we send it to the appraiser looks at it, raises it, doesn't raise it, then the buyer can be notified, or the seller. Now it's the buyer knows firsthand that appraisal is delivered, and at that point, that's where the process begins. And at any time, if I'm talking, guys and ladies, please interrupt if you've got a question. I tend to talk fast, so if you have a question, please feel free to interrupt or raise I think you can raise your hand in the chat, right, Steve? Is that a thing?
You can indeed.
Okay, good. So anyhow, with that being said, do I think the net outcome of that is going to be any different? No. I think the delay is a factor. But I think if you leave here with anything today, I urge everyone, loan officers, realtors, treat the appraisal as another transaction that needs to close, especially on the listing side. I see so many cases where the listing agent either doesn't think they can give information to the appraiser, doesn't everybody thinks it's a slam dunk. I don't need to do that. The appraiser knows his job. I've heard all the reasons why a listing agent doesn't want to do the extra work, but I will tell you that managing this transaction, especially having the understanding of where there are the pending and the under contract comps, if they're going to help you or hurt you. So when you get a call from the appraiser, you're going to want to know that. You're going to want to have rerun your CMA and see what new comps there are that could potentially come in the next couple days, that could help you, in the next couple days that could hurt you. You might want to hurry up and get the appraisal scheduled if you see a comp that's going to come in low. And the key thing is preparing a package for the appraiser that not only, gives him the obvious comps, the stuff that's in the subdivision, the stuff that you put your pricing strategy on, but the ones that you didn't use, the ones that you knew about in the neighborhood that were distressed or low, or, a tax problem, a divorce, they just dumped it, the property was in bad condition. Realize you farm most of these neighborhoods, what's going on in them. Appraiser kind of runs in, jumps in, sees that neighborhood. Any information you can give the appraiser is helpful. And the less worried or concerned you act, guess what? The appraiser is going to be less concerned. So I always talk about putting an appraisal package together. You know what? Give them your best 3 comps. Give them the comps, the sales you didn't use because they're not comps. Give them the options, the upgrades, give them what the people have spent on the property, put it in a package, hand it to them, go, hey, here's what I used to price the property. I'm going to leave you alone. Let you do your job. And then, I always say this after you do that, raise your right hand. I promise I will not leave the appraiser alone with the seller. Don't do that. Manage that part of it because they will tell us everything you do not want us to know about that contract, whether it's the pool table, the mold, the neighborhood characteristics. People, I had a deal fall out. I mean, because there was a sex offender on the same, 2 doors down, and it got disclosed. And the appraisers don't need to know that stuff, and it's just best for us if the seller is not on our heels, if you would. Any questions on that? I mean, does that all make sense? Pretty common sense wise. Does everybody mostly do that? I can't see. Nod your head. Most people meet the appraiser.
And you guys could put in the chat if you want to raise your hand or just jump up and down. Whatever.
I guess I'll say something. I'm a newer agent, so I haven't actually closed a deal yet or gone through an experience of this. Once you would meet the appraisers, what's that timeline like? Obviously from the beginning stages when you're giving you all that information so you can make evaluation to that final number. And then obviously there might be a little, fall back and forth between you and the seller. But what timeline would you say is a typical point for that? And how often do you get backlash for your number?
The timeline's usually the appraisal is generally ordered once all and you correct me on this, Darren. On the lending side, the appraisal is ordered after all the disclosures have been sent out. Is that correct, Darren?
Correct.
Once the appraisal order has been sent out, in our world, we actually send an email out to the listing agent letting them know that the appraisal's been ordered. We actually send out a second email that gives you the appraiser's email information to send him the information that you want him to have. Generally, the timeline, we're about 7 days in terms of delivery from the time of the appraisal order, and usually the inspection takes place within 24 to 72 hours after the appraiser has been assigned and accepted the appraisal. In terms of the appraisal comes in, then usually if there is a gap, an appraisal gap, then or value issue, where the appraisal is below contract, then that's usually when they get, that kind of starts an entire another process that will now take, probably 2 or 3 days to get comps together, to get an underwriter approval. But I will tell you, the more local and personalized the lending experience is that it's going to be easier to have somebody like a Darren who you can actually talk to that can negotiate and kind of, in better word, shepherd that appeal process through. Because if it goes to a lender back east, it could take a week. I mean, it could get lost in a black hole there.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
That did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Darren, I saw a question about appraisal fees there. What are you disclosing to your borrowers on a standard, if there's anything standard in Northern California?
There's really nothing standard. I think right now we put on there $750 and then just adjust it as needed from there.
Yeah.
A lot of it just depends on, when we get with you, what they're going to charge and whatnot as well.
Right.
But if we initially disclosed $750 approximately, we'd rather be high than low because we hate to go in low and then we have to say, hey, we got to charge more for the appraisal.
And all of that depends on the complexity of the property. And what I would say to you is that when you're talking to your clients, especially on the buyer side, and they're asking you about that question, think about how hard the property was for you to comp out. And so if the property is hard for you to figure out what something's worth, then guess what? It's probably going to be a more complex assignment for the appraiser. And you can always call Darren and we can always get a fee quote prior. So, that's easy. We can go out. We have actually, since we've been there now, we probably added another, 5 appraisers there. And if you have anybody that you like, that you are especially comfortable with in your area, you can text those names to Darren, and we can absolutely get them onboarded onto our panel. So that helps us as well. And again, as long as it's all by text, we're in good shape there.
Let me throw out there also, you guys, with this is I have Brent's that line. So if we have to get a rush or if we need something done right away, I don't know, Brent, I've come to you quite a bit on those, and it helps. So he can help. Because I know, for example, I'll give you guys an example. We had one that I think it was down in San Jose or something, and the guy was going to be, he said like 2.5 weeks out, was going to just blow up the deal, but was going to take that long. Text Brent or emailed him or whatever, said, hey, is there anything you could do to help with this? He makes a couple calls, and lo and behold, we got an appraiser out there within 2 days. So just remember that, you guys. If we run across that, we'll handle it.
Yeah, we're seeing a move to shorter contracts, shorter contingencies, and it really all depends on the market we're in. How hungry appraisers are, whether we actually have to charge rush fees or whether we can get somebody who's looking for work. So again, it's all about communicating with Darren and getting, letting us go out and kind of feel out the market as to, can I get something back in 3 days, not pay a rush fee, or pay a rush fee? Is it a possibility? What's the workflows look like there? And you'll know that when you guys look at your sales numbers, you'll see, if the markets are picking up. And obviously that's an inverse effect to appraiser service levels. Any other questions on any of that?
Yeah, I had a question. I have a listing over in Montclair, Oakland, that we're getting close to getting some offers on. And I don't know if it'll be cash or, a loan. The sellers, it's an inheritance. The sellers did an appraiser 2 or 3 months ago before we marketed it and before we had done much in the way of remodel. And so I'm wondering, if a prospective buyer is going to use a loan and the lender's going to want to have a new appraisal probably, will that appraisal come in higher because of the work that we've done in the house?
You would, common sense wise, you would think so. But again, really, I think what you would want to do is go back and rerun your CMA and see if there are new comps that maybe are more reflective of that new condition.
Right. Well, like for example, there was a comp that wasn't on the market at the time, buyer hadn't sold yet. Just up the street, about 3 blocks up the street, this property is a small 1,100 square foot, built in 1928, on a gorgeous half-acre property, the year-round stream and redwoods, and just it has a lot of that house is livable, but it has a lot of potential to make it much bigger. But up the street, there was just a small lot, but a little bit bigger home, like 1,400 square feet, completely remodeled. And that this house that we're selling, it was appraised at $900, and we put it out at $895, and we're expecting to get much more than that. We'll see. But the house up the street, they had this completely remodeled 3-bedroom, 1,400 square foot home on a small lot at $965, but it sold for 1.2.
Okay.
And that's a new comp, that it sold for 1.2. So if an appraiser looks at the, not that difference in the price that it was listed at, but it sold for so much higher, and it's a much smaller property lot, but a fully upgraded, slightly larger home. Just wondering how this, how that might affect the appraisal on this property if somebody comes in and puts an offer for $1 million, and needs to take a proper standard loan on it.
Right. And I'm not an expert in your area. All I can tell you is when we see as appraisers, one of the big red flags in our world is when we see a list price of $995 with a final sales contract at $1.2 million, because sometimes it becomes more a transaction price to get the property as opposed to the market value. Not that I wouldn't use that as a comp, but if it was my subject property and I had it listed and it was listed at $995, I'd be looking very closely at the days on market of that property. So common sense wise is if it's a short days on market, I can justify a low list price and a higher sales price because I can make the argument that it was listed low to elicit multiple offers. However, if that same home has been on the market 60 days at a million, and let's say everything being equal in terms of market stability, and now I need 50,000 in closing costs and commissions paid, and now it's $1,050,000. That's where the big aha moment in an appraiser goes, well, wait a minute, could somebody have just come in and paid cash at $1 million?
Well, yes, interesting. In this case, it was on the market for about 60 days, and it did sell for that much higher price at 1.2. And when I looked at the history, it had actually sold for 1.3 back in 2021, but the market's a bit depressed in that area. It's inconsistent in that area.
Right.
So whoever decided to buy it saw the value in it and got a deal because the people that were selling it had paid 1.3.
I would say to you, everything you're talking about and kind of trying to figure it out, you would absolutely want to have that conversation with the appraiser when you meet him at the property and give him the explanation as to how you got there and how this is reflective of market value and not just, because we need it for closing costs and, et cetera.
So what I hear is also my first listing, and so although I've been around the business forever, but I'm just in the business now for a year or so, is that if the sellers accept an offer that includes a contingency on a loan, that they will be sending an appraisal to get a new appraisal done, and it would be my responsibility as a seller's agent to be present with the appraiser.
And or making sure you email him information that basically it outlines your pricing strategies and with your comps that you thought were viable alternatives.
And does the buyer's agent and appraisal does that information usually come to the seller's agent as part of the transaction?
Yeah, it comes to the listing agent, yes. Or we get it from the listing agent. We we very seldom get any information from the buyer's side. Sometimes it happens where they'll ask the loan officer to put it in. I mean, we can take information from anybody. Fannie Mae guidelines basically, put in their appraisal independence regulations that realtor information is a valuable resource for appraisers. You know what? Take advantage of that.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yep. Great.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be sitting in on this. I'm a solar broker. So my question is related to how do you treat a home with owned, not leased, but owned solar, please?
I thought I'd get out of this whole thing, without that solar question. Here I got somebody who knows more about it than I do.
Well, I bought a number of houses over the years. I buy fixers and flip them. And when I gut them, I make a very complete list of all the work that I did. I totally give everything to the appraiser, my friend, to help me get the price I want to sell it for. But what I found over, a decade ago was solar wasn't really accepted or given a value. We finally, with MLS, got it actually to be a line item with MLS.
Right. What is it? I'll just say, does it say owned or leased?
Oh, yes. It calls it out because owned is an added value to the home.
Right.
If it's leased, you don't own it.
Right.
Right. And that can be a negative for selling. But what I wanted to say about what's happened over the years with solar is it's not what you paid for the solar system. We might be leaving in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. No, it's not what you paid for it being added on as a value. It's what that size of solar system is worth at that time. For example, 20 years ago, I put solar on a house. It was really expensive back then. I paid $45,000. Eventually, when I sold the house, it had a 5 kilowatt solar system, but I didn't get $45,000 added on. I got the current price of a 5 kilowatt system, which was about 20 grand. But they did put in 20 grand for an owned solar system. So I was just wondering if you had any feelings or if anything's kind of changed from that. That's one of those educations I try to do with the appraiser I work with.
Yeah. And every appraiser, you could get 20 appraisers in a room and everybody's going to have there are going to be some appraisers who actually look at it, they'll make their adjustment on how many kilowatts. I mean, there's formulas for that. There's appraisers who will look at the savings, the energy savings as a rent, as a kind of a
Oh, wow.
income to the property. Okay,
That's a new one.
So there are appraisers who think it's not worth anything. There are appraisers who think, you know what, I'll take the cost, I'll depreciate it based on how old the panels are, I'll knock out the federal tax credit, and I'll give some kind of fractional amount between X and X. And we see all that. And then we also, it's so hard because even owned, a lot of people go, oh, it's on a purchase contract. Well, no, it's got to be owned free and clear, no payments at all, because common sense wise, if they stop making payments, somebody's going to come rip it off the roof. And so I'm going to punt here to my friend Steve Caldwell, my solar expert. But no, I here every time, and I'll just say one more thing. People don't put and spend money on paying off their solar if they're going to sell their house. So it's very seldom that we will have really a great comp in that neighborhood where somebody actually had solar, paid it off, and then put that home back on the market. So
or over the course of time.
So I will, in my mind, I treat it like another upgrade. I treat it like somebody just, like a big kitchen remodel. I think about it all together in this bundle of stuff, if you would, that each house has. So I'll always go to the high side when that solar system is owned, because I really think of it as another upgrade.
Thank you. It is an asset when it's owned. And typically what I've seen here in Sonoma County, Marin County, is at about $4 a watt, whatever size system that is. That's about a rough number to give it, assuming that it's not 25 years old, right? So thank you very much for addressing it and for being open and giving me some
I think that was a dance around it. I don't know if I gave you. Steve, is there anything you can add to my
honestly, it was great. And also, Dina, it sounds like you are super knowledgeable when it comes to solar. Solar is kind of a unique scenario, right? When you have those different terminologies, and every MLS is different. To piggyback on what Brent was mentioning, having that as a comparable item to adjust for is super valuable for anybody. If it is an upgrade, if it is a thing, back in the day when I give this example sometimes when I teach too, when you have, back in the day, like air conditioning units in the 50s were not really a thing, right? Like central air units. If you look at it now, having a central air is almost like, why don't you have that? Very similarly to a solar panel or on the roof. It's early adoption. A lot of those, not many people have had those. So it was very difficult for appraisers to justify and kind of value those items. Now they're becoming much more readily available, and obviously having the information on the MLS having the distinction between owned and leased is very, very valuable to know. But it is still a little bit more difficult, at least from my experience, to give a generic valuation to those solar panels. But all the information that you can give to the appraiser regarding those panels is super valuable. So, and your expertise is awesome. So,
of course,
I'm
not sure I can answer any more than Brent did. So,
well, feel free to call me if you have a question. Thank you, gentlemen.
I love it. Be careful what you ask for or tell us. I appreciate that. That's nice. The other, we talked about the going over list price is a landmine, kind of a red flag for appraisers. Also now, last year, Fannie Mae sent out what I call a naughty letter to appraisers for not considering the seller concessions on the comparables, not necessarily the subject property, but the comparables. So if you're looking at a home, you're getting ready to price a property, and you've got a model match at $1.2 million, and that seller had to pay $45,000 in seller concessions. And I don't know how your MLS, if it lists out seller concessions still. Some have gone to yes, no, some have gone to not having them in. But if there's a specific concession amount, you want to set the expectation with your seller that it is highly possible that $1.2 million comp will really only be $1,155,000 comp to the appraiser, because he may deduct up to $1 for dollar for that seller concession in our quest to get into cash equivalency. That's what we're supposed to, what we're charged with as appraisers on that comparable is what is cash equivalency for that comp. And then especially if we see that that number, that sales price was over the history amount, we have a pretty good idea is that's what it took to sell the property. So always when you're talking or running your CMAs or looking at data, always make sure that you've gone in and called that. If it's not listed, we're going to call the agent. We're going to call the agent and verify that information. And now FHA, VA, conventional, we're seeing it on more and more appraisals where that seller concession number is being deducted right off the top. Here in Las Vegas, we had agents who didn't want it in there at all because they knew that it was going to, lower their appraised values. And then it now just goes to yes or no. It just says, were concessions paid? Yes, no. And so that means we still have to call. And the other thing is when you do get calls from appraisers, realize, I know they're a pain, but realize that it's on somebody else's transaction. So any information you can give the appraiser as quickly as possible, because we have there are appraisers who will hold up until they got that kind of information verified. Any questions on that topic? Any thoughts? Has anybody seen that where an appraisal's come in low because of that? So that's usually one of the things. I mean, that's one of the main reasons we see an appraisal come in like maybe a few thousand shy or 10,000 shy. Everybody goes, "Oh, the appraiser can't be that good." But really what they're doing is they're taking into account the seller concessions is usually one of the big drivers of those value issues. All right, anybody have any questions up till now? Come on, you got us here. Ask some questions. Darren, have you been seeing many waivers?
I've seen one maybe in the last few months, which was great. Obviously it's, low loan to value. I think we were under 60 maybe. So they're out there for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things that's happened recently and is actually coming up here in April is they have lowered the eligibility for appraisal waivers. And while I know that everybody loves hearing appraisal waivers, other than Steve and myself, we're the only two people on this call who don't like appraisal waivers because we don't get paid on those. But the eligibility now went from, it used to be 80% or below LTV. Now it's raised up all the way up to 97% eligibility for appraisal waivers and or appraisal waivers with a property inspection from a non-appraiser. It could be an appraiser, but it's mostly, so basically it's a waiver with a property data report, which outlines the condition of the property. So you may be seeing more of them, on your Fannie Freddie deals. It's going to be interesting to see. It's really not just a function of the property. It's a function of the down payment. It's a function of the debt to income ratio. It's a function of the credit box that the borrower falls in. It's a function of whether the property has had an appraisal on it for the last, 3 to 5 years. So they have knowledge of that property in the database. So, and the other side note, if you do get a property with an appraisal waiver and your buyer still wants an appraisal, they don't have to do it through the lender. They can do it privately. So that way it doesn't impact your waiver if you still want to make sure you have that. But again, you can use a private appraisal as a negotiating tool, for that transaction. It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see if you get more of those.
Yeah, really good to know.
So I had sent Darren. I had sent you that training, correct? That training sheet.
Yes.
Okay, so what after, if you would, and what I did, everybody, is with the things we talked about today, I put in a training module, so Darren can send you everything. It pretty much covers everything we're talking about here. So, and it's got our phone number on it, but that way you'll have all this. It's kind of just a synopsis of everything that we're talking about today. And as things change in this, we can always do updates to it as things change, because things seem to be changing very quickly around everything these days. So
to be on the safe side, I know I have that. You probably sent it to my All Western, yeah?
mm-hmm.
I just sent it in the chat.
Oh, perfect. There we go. Thanks, Steve.
You guys are covered. You're good.
Yeah.
Wow,
So guys,
you're really stepping up today, Steve.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a long weekend. I had a good ski weekend.
Okay.
I feel pretty good today, so we're good.
All right.
So Brent, what else on as far as like some of the bells and whistles on YR3, just briefly, because I know that when we talked before, there's just a lot of stuff that's some tools for the agents that they can possibly use if those are still available.
Yeah, in fact, one of the biggest things that we've got coming up, and I was going to talk to you about it here quickly, Darren, is that we actually are taking everything, kind of the things we've talked about today. I don't know how many of you have been playing with Chat GPT, how much anybody's using it in their, in their daily. We hired a consultant a few months ago to help try and bring our appraisal management company into the 21st century with AI. And within the next few weeks, we will actually have a beta test for an appraisal knowledge base that Darren will be able to share with you. It'll be private labeled for All Western Mortgage. It will be a knowledge base of VA policies, Fannie Mae, FHA, our uniform standards of appraisal. It will be a very, very formidable knowledge base. Steve has a 3-hour continuing education class we put in it. I have an hour continuing education class that I have in Nevada. So the goal is for you to have a resource through Darren where you're going to be able to go on and get as much appraisal information as you want. And when you can't get the right answer, you'll still have us to help back up with that. So we're super excited. We're calling it Appraisal Assist. And we'll be able to, you'll be seeing that, Darren, here in the next 2 to 3 weeks when we go live. And I would love to have this group as a beta test group. Tell us what you think. Tell us what try it, play with it. Tell us what kind of results you're getting. And we're real excited about that. Yeah, and what we have also, we have 2 products that we have pricing products. I partnered with an AI company out of New York called PropMix.io. There are 2 free products that you can access. One is called CompCheck.ai, and it's a national database of public record from across the country. And what it does is it applies appraisal search parameters, combines AI similarity scoring, and the goal is to give you your 4 best comps and give you an idea of what an appraiser is going to look at. Depending on your MLS that you're in, and which MLS are most of you in?
Berries.
Berries,
yeah.
And that is one that we have not we don't have a broker there. We had one, and so we're not live at Barris right now. But it's called ValueTest.ai, and what that does is it takes that same CompCheck AI search and applies it to your MLS database. But as soon as I get Barris up, we're working on finding an appraiser there to be our sponsor of it, because we need a key person there to allow us to have a vendor agreement. And we have vendor agreements with 400 MLSs across the country. It's just one of those odd ones that we don't have anymore for, I think the broker either left retired or just didn't want to be a sponsor of it. So, but you can use that CompCheck AI. It's very good. As you know, public records, depending on the lag time, it's the same information. It just doesn't give you as much in-depth detail as the value test.
So guys, if you have an appraiser out there, or Brent, maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but recommend, or if we have an agent that's on this call that has an appraiser that may want to be that person, is that how, I mean, how do you choose them?
You know, I just haven't had a reason to do it. But you know what? If everybody's interested in the value test product, I'll absolutely put it on my list for the next month. And if you do have anybody does have an appraiser that they have any kind of relationship with, I'd love to talk to them. We're starting to get a lot more business there. We're actually going national here. We're licensed in 30 states. We've got 20 more states that we have in process. And so we're kind of taking this whole, basically appraisal solution from how we're getting appraisals ordered, making sure that we're urging people to be proactive and treat the appraisal, as something very, very important that needs to close as well. And then being able to give you this kind of information where it's not going to replace your CMA, but what it is going to do is it's going to add some heft to it when you're able to say, yeah, these are the comps that were pulled by, with research that an appraisal company uses. So those are the two key components. And then of course, with this AI coming up, I think that any AI knowledge, what we've seen so far, that we've been blown away. I mean, there are tools now that can take your website and create a podcast for you, just by putting the URL of your website in. I mean,
it's unreal.
It's nuts. I mean,
it's legit.
Yeah. We've had our eyes open to it, and I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for agents and for all of us to be adopting it, and we just want to lead the way on that.
So if you guys have an appraiser you have in mind, email Brent, Steve, or myself, or text me or whatever, and we'll get it out there and get that going. The main thing to remember here, guys, is that we have Brent and Steve on speed dial. So if we need something, if there's questions, and it's rare that you can actually have that with an AMC. So it's something it's been very, very beneficial for us. So just don't hesitate to reach out.
All right. Anything else? But you got anything?
Brent, Steve, thank you guys very, very much. Everyone that got on the call, thank you. And I will follow up with any notes, things like that. So just stand by on that. And if you have questions or if you need anything, you know how to get in touch with me. You have Brent and Steve's information as well. And we'll just keep digging. Stay active.
David, I just saw your text. Text me the address. I'll take a look and see why that isn't in there. It should be in the county record.
The address was there, just didn't find any comps.
Oh, did you expand the search?
No.
Expand the search, because there's two different search parameters to it. One is a narrow search, and then we expand it out to try and find. So it's basically the same kind of search methodology that an appraiser uses when there is no data.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for bringing forth, and thanks, Darren, for putting this together.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
Dina has a question, I think.
I have a question of Darren.
Oh,
Do
yes.
you do 203K loans, rehab loans? So
Absolutely.
then my question would be for the two appraisers, provide you with appraisals for that future value when it's all fixed up, and thus the 203K loan is based on. You guys deal in those?
Yeah, there's a as is and as repaired value. Yeah.
Excellent.
100%. Yeah.
Excellent. I know someone I can refer to you now. Thank you.
All righty. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys. Thank
All right.
you. Thanks,
Thank you,
Brent. Thanks,
guys.
Steve. We'll talk to you soon.
Very well.
Bye, everyone.
Pleasure.
Bye.